People everywhere are starting to listen to him. He's going on French, British, Italian, Japanese television.
This is the Wide World of Weingarten.
Welcome back, Wide World of Weingarten. It is December 9th, Thursday, 12:30 here in Los Angeles. Sorry about the slightly sporadic nature of these podcasts. I know there's a couple days missing during the week lately, and the reason for that mostly is this time of year, it's right at the end, post-baseball season, and my schedule kind of changes with the sporting events. And as we stop with the daily football and we move more into weekend football kind of stuff with just the NFL on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays, and bowl season, you only end up with one, football game a day. I don't necessarily work less, but my schedule changes and my betting patterns change. My volume goes down drastically this time of year, as it does compared to, like, say, August, September, July. So there's just slightly less for me to talk about, and my goal is to give you the best content that I can produce, which means sometimes there won't be anything interesting to talk about, or I won't make a bet on a Tuesday or a Wednesday in December or January, or if I do, there are probably some college basketball bets that I'm just making, for $50 or $100 or $200 for my own action. I don't necessarily feel like you should tail me on an Irvine game that I'm going to tell you, or you're going to ask, why did you bet Irvine? I'm going to say, well, because I went to school there and I wanted to watch the game. That's not fair to you to give you a bet like that. So my goal is to give you stuff that I think has value and could actually win. And if I don't have anything good to talk about on a Tuesday or a Wednesday in December, I just don't want to do a show and waste your time for 10 minutes or a half hour when I can give you, a half hour or 40 minutes of good content. But as baseball gets closer to returning, assuming it does return and we don't miss too much time, or maybe just some spring training, but when baseball comes back, I will give you so much content daily, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, twice a day. Who knows? You're going to get sick of me because baseball has so much to talk about all the time. But I forgot to mention yesterday or 2 days ago, if you'll excuse me for a moment, I have to pick this up behind me. I forgot to mention 2 days ago when I was talking about this wonderful 4-volume set of books called The Greatest Story in Sports, the Green Bay Packers' first 100 years, 1919 to 2019. The reason I was talking about that, not just because it's a great book, I've been staying up all night reading it 2 nights in a row. I've just finished volume 3. It was like 250, 300 pages of the Packers from the post-Lombardi years to the Super Bowl of the late 90s. And it was good stuff. I started reading it, and I was reading about the Bart Starr years, and I just couldn't put it down until I finished the Bart Starr years. And they kept him way too long. They kept him 9 seasons. I kept reading it. I was like, are they going to fire him yet? Are they going to fire him yet? And I had to keep reading it. So I've been reading that book for the last 2 days, but the reason I mentioned this book, other than it being great, is that the author is Cliff Crystal, who is a beat writer for the Wisconsin newspapers on the Packers beat for 30 plus years, and he used to host web chats on the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel website after every Packers game when I was growing up, and I'd always read them with my dad. And occasionally I would ask questions and he would answer them, which I thought was really cool for a teenager. But and by we I mean my dad, he paid for an online subscription to Packers Plus so we could read the Packers news from the beat writers every day. And he was the main attraction. He would write stuff every week. He had blogs. He had stuff on the history of the Packers, And I wish I'd saved more of them, but I mean, I grew up reading all this stuff, so a lot of it's ingrained in me. But he would analyze all the drafts, and he talked about how the odds of finding a Pro Bowl player would fall off exponentially by the 5th pick, the 10th pick, the 15th pick, etc. And he drilled home just how rare Tom Brady's draft pick, what being picked in the 6th round was, how it was a 1 in a million sort of thing, and how hard it is to find quarterbacks, build teams around quarterbacks late in the draft. That's just not how teams are built. He talked a lot about, excuse me, what he learned about building teams from 30 years on the football beat, and how great teams are built, and the mistakes that a lot of teams made, that he's seen, how hard it is to find a quarterback. I learned a lot from him, from reading his stuff growing up. And he's now the Packers team historian. He works for the team. That's how that book got created and put out. He has access to all the archives and everything. But Cliff Crystal is number one on my list of people who are invited to be guests on the show, because I have a lot of questions to talk to him about, to ask him. And he also wrote this book, which you see it's not as good condition. It's a very hard book to find. I've seen very few copies of it in circulation in all my years of doing gambling stuff, and if there were more copies of it in circulation, I would buy them. So I can have all the copies. But I would really like to get this book digitalized at some point too. It's called, the full title is Sleepers, Busts, and Franchise Makers. You could see it. I had to remember what that first one is because it's in such bad condition. It's hard to see, but Sleepers, Bust, and Franchise Maker by Cliff Crystal and John Langenkamp. It's out of print, but this is a mid-1980s book about drafting football players. It's sleepers, busts, and franchise makers. It's everything that Cliff Crystal learned. He interviewed everybody that's important in football alive in 1985, including, I think it has George Halas's last interview, George Halas Sr., discussing how they draft, how they scout players, what they look for, experiences, anecdotes. And a lot of it, if you were to read this book today, some of it's outdated. Like, for example, there's a whole section on John Elway and how he and his agent forced a trade from Baltimore to Denver, and the whole background on that. That's not necessarily as interesting to people as it is today. And there's pre-combine stuff. Back when they wrote this book, there were like 3 or 4 different competing combines. There wasn't one combine yet. So some of the stuff they're talking about is outdated, but a lot of the scouting and a lot of the theory stuff, it still applies today, especially the concept of Playmaker Theory, which Cliff Crystal's written about extensively. But Playmaker Theory essentially says that there at any given time is maybe a handful of players in the sport, in football. There's a handful of players in the entirety of the NFL. Number could be as low as 10, as high as 25, somewhere in between there. They're actually difference makers in the game. Everybody else is completely replaceable, and you could probably think of most of these players if you start really thinking about it. But the Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jacksons of the world, at any given time there's 10, 15, maybe 20 to 25 of these players in the NFL who can actually take over a game, who could change the game. And that's the key to the draft, is finding these players, drafting these players, and identifying the talent. And that's what first round picks are for, is to find one of these guys, one of these potential top 25 guys who can change your franchise. Otherwise you're just going to be stuck with mediocrity over and over and over again. You see it all over the NFL when you really start to look. You need those franchise changing players, and the only way to acquire them is via the draft. They rarely hit free agency. You see, recently, like the Odell Beckham, Von Miller acquisitions by the Rams. Good players are rarely available. Randy Moss is available after he's done his amazing stuff. He put up some dud numbers, other than when he went to the Patriots for a quick minute. But him, Terrell Owens, guys, great players don't become available very often. They do. There's usually a reason. So the draft is the most important thing in football, and the only way you can win and sustain winning is by drafting, which is one of the reasons why it's so weird what a lot of the stuff the Rams do with trading their picks. It leaves their margin of error so thin. But that stuff, some of the stuff, Cliff Crystal stuff, I'll talk about more as we get to the off season for football. But that book, Sleepers Bust, Franchise Makers, is probably one of the most important football books ever written, and we could probably spend some time talking about it during the off season. Like I said, I learned a lot from him. But got to jump in right to NFL awards and future stuff. The MVP. I've mentioned Circa is who I think has the most accurate market numbers for NFL awards, and they update them weekly. Brady's the favorite everywhere. He's plus 165 at Circa. Rodgers next, 6-1, which is down. I think it's down to low it's been since after week 1. He got as high as 32-1 at Circa. So down to 6-1. I hope somebody grabbed that 32-1 after week 1. I didn't. It was a good number in retrospect. Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor tied third, 10-1. Then you have Stafford, Allen, Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Justin Herbert in the next tier, all at 13-1. Lamar Jackson behind them, 30-1. Cooper Kupp, 75-1, and everybody else 100-1 plus. So down to four main contenders. Then you got 5 guys in the next tier, and then Lamar Jackson and Cooper Kupp behind all them. I made 2 bets this week, which I'll tell you right now. Patrick Mahomes at 12-1 and 11-1. I grabbed some of those numbers, and Cooper Kupp I bet at 150-1, and I bet him at 100-1. I think I bet him all the way down to 80-1 actually. So I bet sometimes I have various different numbers, and there's limits to numbers, so I will play as much as I can at the best number, and I'll play a little bit more at varying lower numbers. For Cooper Kupp, I was able to get it at different books. I'll mention some of them when I get down there, but I was able to play it as high as 150-1 and low as 80-1. I don't think I'd play it much lower than 80 or 100. But the numbers, the stuff I looked at, here's basically where I think we're at with MVP stuff going into the last month or so of the season. Kyler Murray would only be the 3rd MVP to win while missing 3 games. First since Joe Montana did it in 1989. John Elway did it in 87, but the 3 games he missed were strike/replacement games. So I don't really know how much I would use 1987 in context for winning MVP. But the only other player who missed 3 games due to injury and won the MVP was Joe Montana in 1989. So it's not impossible for Kyler Murray to win the MVP, but precedent is thin. There is precedent, but it's thin. 5 guys have won MVP while missing 2 games. The most recent was Steve McNair in 2003 and Marshall Faulk in the year 2000. And in the last 15 seasons, only 2 MVPs didn't play on a division winner. That would be Matt Ryan in 2016 and Adrian Peterson in 2012. He might have been on a division winner, actually. I have to check that. But 2012 Vikings did not win 12 games. Those are the only 2 winners, 2016 Matt Ryan and 2012 Adrian Peterson, to win the MVP with less than 12 wins. So if you're using the standard criteria at the moment, I would say you're looking at 12-win teams and division winners. So the candidates most likely are going to be Rodgers, Brady, Kyler Murray, and Mac Jones. If the Patriots get to 12 wins, 12 wins division title would, in fact, make Mac Jones a candidate. I absolutely don't think he's going to win with his current numbers. I'm just pointing out that he would fit that criteria. I also wouldn't count out Patrick Mahomes, who still has a shot at getting the 12 wins. And then Stafford. Stafford is going to need to win the division, which starts with the Rams beating the Cardinals this week. So if the Rams have any chance at a player in this race, in the MVP race, they're going to have to win the division this week. Or, sorry, not win the division. They're going to have to beat the Cardinals this week to get back in the division race. But I started looking at the numbers, and Cooper Kupp. Is Cooper Kupp a viable MVP candidate? I'm not going to bet him at 75 to 1 at Circa. I'm not going to bet him at 40 to 1 at DraftKings. But like I said, I bet from 80 to 1 to 150 to 1. 150 to 1 is available at FanDuel. 125 to 1 available at BetMGM. There's some 100 to 1s out there. He leads all receivers in just about every category except 20-plus yard receptions, where he's second. He's first in receptions, first in yards, first in touchdowns, first in yards after catch, first in first downs. I think you could probably say he's the most important player on the Rams offense because what he does in space, the yards after the catch, he opens so much up for the rest of the Rams offense for all the other players. I don't necessarily think it's a stretch to consider him a contender for MVP. And in most cases, I think, Stafford's 12 to 1, Kupp is 80 to 1 to 150 to 1. I think Kupp should probably be closer to Stafford or to Jonathan Taylor. For example, Circa has Jonathan Taylor 10 to 1. They have Kupp 75 to 1. I don't think Jonathan Taylor is doing anything wrong or doing anything bad, but when you put his rushing yards in context with rushing, the rushing leaders every season, I don't think he's necessarily having a better rushing season than, the best rusher has in an average NFL season. He's playing behind a great offensive line. He's doing a lot of great things, but I don't necessarily see how he's 10 to 1 to win MVP and Cooper Kupp 75 to 1. It's an example of where I think numbers should probably be closer together as opposed to so wide apart, especially when they're both not on division winning teams. But the Rams are playing the Cardinals this weekend, so a win over the Cardinals, they'd only be one back in the division. It's obviously a steep climb to the top here for any team to knock off someone like the Cardinals, and the Cardinals do have a fairly easy schedule down the stretch too. But you got to start somewhere. So if you were grabbing 125 to 1 or 150 to 1, and the Rams do win this weekend, I do think you'll see that Cooper Kupp number come down, especially if he has another big game. So I was happy to get in a little bit on Cooper Kupp this week. I think with the way all the quarterbacks are playing, there's no clear cut MVP contenders, and I do think Mahomes, we kind of take for granted how good he is, even if he's outside of that 5 touchdown game versus the Raiders. He's thrown like 2 touchdowns in the last month, besides that one game, but still plenty of time for him to turn it on to remind everybody he's the best quarterback in the NFL. So yeah, Cooper Kupp and Patrick Mahomes are my MVP bets this week. 125, 150 to 1, down to 80 to 1, and 11 to 1, 12 to 1 for Mahomes. On to offensive player of the year, offensive rookie of the year. Mac Jones minus 500, minus 450 at Circa, minus 500 at DraftKings, minus 400 at BetMGM. The most important stat is wins for quarterback for rookie, and he's got 9 of them. He's quarterback on the first place team in the AFC East, and the Patriots are playing for the number 1 seed. I think minus 500 is probably short. I'd definitely lay minus 400 at BetMGM if you're willing to lay a big price and lock your money up till the Super Bowl. It's about, I think, 8-9 weeks, but you're gonna get your money back most likely. Gonna take a break real quick, so we'll be right back. Welcome back, Wide World of Weingarten. Going over NFL futures, player futures. Got the defensive rookie of the year, Micah Parsons, up to minus 2,000 at DraftKings. I think we can ink his name on the award. He'll win the defensive rookie of the year, and he'll be a shortlist guy for defensive player of the year next year. Keep your eye on him. I think he actually has the best pass rushing metrics in the NFL this year, better than Myles Garrett. He's not going to contend for defensive player of the year most likely this year, but definitely a contender next year. Offensive player of the year, It's Cooper Kupp, the aforementioned Cooper Kupp, and Jonathan Taylor. It's them two. I don't see much else here at this point. I hope Taylor wins because I bet him at 20-1. I got nothing on Kupp, although I did just bet him to win the MVP. So I'm hoping some weird situation where Kupp gets boosted to MVP and Taylor wins Offensive Player of the Year, but I don't expect that to happen. Although I think if somehow Tom Brady doesn't win MVP, it is possible that a quarterback is not the winner of MVP or Offensive Player of the Year this year. Could just be a weird season. But let's circle back to those thoughts next week after another crazy weekend of chaos in the NFL, most likely. Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt has jumped Myles Garrett for the favorite. Didn't necessarily see that coming. I kind of wrote TJ Watt off when he had COVID. A lot of people, including TJ Watt's brother JJ Watt, thinks TJ was snubbed for the award last year. I don't, because Aaron Donald's the best defensive player in the NFL, regardless of what TJ Watt's brother thinks. I could see Watt winning if the Steelers make the playoffs, though. I do think the winner is going to come from a playoff team, which worries me about Myles Garrett. I think the Browns probably get left out with a very competitive field fighting for those 7 AFC spots. I think Trevon Diggs is worthy if a defensive back's going to win. His 9 interceptions lead the league, but he's going to have to push that to double digits. I think 10, 11 is probably where he becomes a viable, serious candidate. But 10, 11, if he pushes it to 12 with another pick 6, maybe he could really seal the award. But it's far from over at this point, and Cowboys are going to have to avoid some upsets down the stretch. Big performances by the defense, and that's what it's going to take for Diggs to to seriously contend for Defensive Player of the Year. Then there's the Matt Judon, Aaron Donald, Trey Hendrickson, J.C. Jackson. That tier, they're all elite defenders, but I think Judon's the only guy who has a shot to win there. Judon, he's playing on the number 1 defense in the AFC right now, AFC East, potential number 1 seed. Been a great signing. If a defender is going to win that's not coming from the TJ Watt, Trevon Diggs, and Myles Garrett group, I think Matt Judon is the guy at this point. Beyond that, Donald, Hendrickson, J.C. Jackson, all playing for votes, but not going to win. Then Coach of the Year, I have a whole thing about why Belichick should not be Coach of the Year, and then they play that game versus the Bills, and they're in first place. So he's plus 125. Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona, plus 350. Matt LaFleur, plus 750. These are DraftKings numbers, by the way. Zach Taylor, 4th at 12-1. I think Circa has better numbers, and I don't think Belichick should necessarily win. I think, like I said before, he's the general manager of the year, and if you really want to see a shakeup in this market, the Rams are going to have to beat the Cardinals this weekend. Otherwise, it's Belichick and Kingsbury in first or second. You could flip the order, but you're going to really need some shakeup with the Cardinals losing to the Rams this weekend to get any sort of traction for any other candidates in this market at this point. Brandon Staley's still alive at 16-1. Kind of sort of talking myself into Mike Tomlin at 200-1 today. If the Steelers win tonight, they're still in the playoff hunt. They could win the division. The Ravens are at the Browns this weekend, then they have the Packers. They're at the Bengals, the Rams, and Steelers finish up the year. So they play each other. Ravens and Steelers play each other week 18. Steelers at the Cardinals tonight. Then they play the Titans. They're at the Chiefs. That's a big game. The Browns, and then at the Ravens, like I mentioned, they finish the season against each other. A long shot, but week 18 could see the Ravens Steelers play for a division title, or at the very least a playoff spot. And it's very important to keep in mind the Ravens lost Marlon Humphrey, one of their best cornerbacks, this last week. Jimmy Smith is hurt. He hasn't been 100% all season. I don't even know what his deal is, actually. I got to check. But the Ravens have had a serious run of injuries on both sides of the ball going back to training camp. and a lot of it is you can overcome a lot of injuries in the NFL, next man up kind of thing. What is very hard to overcome is losing an all-pro cornerback late in the season. Marlon Humphrey is a very good football player. I don't know how well known he is to everybody, but he's kind of a guy that when you show me a team and you tell me which players do we not want to lose, Marlon Humphrey is very high on that list. So I'm not very confident that the Ravens are going to hold this division lead the way they've been playing. They did just lose to the Steelers. They have a Week 18 rematch. I very much expect Week 18, and the NFL sets this up, mind you. They want Week 18 to be as competitive as possible. I very much see Ravens-Steelers Week 18 as a potential division title game, or at the very least for a playoff spot. Same thing, Cowboys-Eagles Week 18. I expect that to be serious playoff implications. Chiefs Broncos Week 18 could have playoff implications. There's a scenario where the Steelers end up, I think, 10-6-1, and I think 10-6-1, and the Ravens go 10-7, and the Steelers win the division. So keep your eye out for big prices. I kind of like the Steelers to win the AFC North at 14.75 plus 14.75 at Circa. I haven't bet that yet, but I'm looking into it. I'm compelled to look at the AFC North race a bit more today. And we have Thursday Night Football tonight. Steelers +3 plus 105 against the Vikings. +3.5 minus 115. I've seen both of those numbers this afternoon. The Vikings can't conceivably catch the Packers for the NFC North division, but they're on the fringe of the wild card race with a couple other teams that are all kind of sputtering along there at the bottom of the wild card pack. But I'd like the Steelers to win tonight. I don't have much of an opinion on this game. I did see Dalvin Cook is back from injury. I looked at the first touchdown markets. I didn't see much there either. These markets, the first touchdown stuff, they get slightly more efficient as the seasons go on, but mostly books just dejuice the numbers on stuff. So there's not much value, and you just look through it. You're like, all right, I could move on real quick. But I do like the idea of betting the Steelers plus 14.75 for the AFC North in the event they win tonight. There's chaos this weekend. Maybe the Browns upset the Ravens. I think we see that number come down a lot. So if you have access to Circa, plus 14.75 for the AFC North would be my favorite bet for the game tonight. The Army-Navy game, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more today. I'll probably talk about it again tomorrow as I finalize some more bets. But the line's holding steady at 7. I see the total was as low as 33.5, as high as 35. Currently mostly 34s, 34.5s out there. Although the big thing is that when you have two teams like this that both run triple option offenses, they tend to know how to defend them. And a lot of the times, like I mentioned, I watch a lot of Army football because it's on early in the morning. On Saturdays, I like to get my gambling started and done early. But so I watch Army, and they'll play a team like Middle Tennessee State or UConn, and those teams don't necessarily ever see the triple option offense. So they only get a week to practice, and they only get to practice against their scout team. So they don't necessarily know how to stop Army, and Army just runs through them. They keep the clock running, they grind them down, they gas the defense, and they're done. Game's over. Game's over when Army gets up 2 touchdowns early. Probably gonna have a hard time stopping them once they get your defense on their heels. But when Army plays Navy, it's nothing new for either one of these defenses. They spend all year, they spend all practice, every day in practicing against this exact offense. So that's one of the reasons why you see such a low total. I do think you have to keep in mind that Army can throw the ball slightly better than they have in past years, but even with that, you realize that with the offenses both of these teams run, they're going to minimize possessions. So the line is fair. I don't think there's a ton of value on either side, but if you do get a 33.5, I would bet the over. I just think 33.5 is too low for a football team. Even if a football game with 0 passes, I think 33.5 is on the low end. I got a couple questions from people on Twitter who have been listening to the show that I wanted to answer that are related to the futures markets and the Army Navy game. The first one is Matt. Matt asks, can Jalen Waddle win Offensive Rookie of the Year? FanDuel and DraftKings have Waddle 100-1, and Circa has it 12-1. I looked it up. I checked it out a little bit because anytime you see a 12-1 versus 100-1 discrepancy between Circa and the other books, you have to check it out. You're practically required to. But Circa has slightly different numbers for their Rookie of the Year market. They have Creed Humphreys 25-1. He's not listed anywhere else. I don't think we're going to see a center win Rookie of the Year, although Creed Humphreys is putting up excellent numbers. Same with Waddle. He's putting up very good numbers, even though he's not being talked about very much. I think a lot of that has to do with he only has like 4 touchdowns. But he would need his numbers. He'd have to put up even bigger numbers down the stretch than what he's done. He'd have to increase his touchdown numbers. Talking like 4, 5, 6 touchdowns, probably get to 10 touchdowns. So you're looking at almost a touchdown every game the rest of the season. And Dolphins would have to beat the Patriots week 18 with Waddle having a huge game. So you're asking for a lot of things to happen. Not necessarily impossible, and it's not worth $100. It's not if you're really convinced that the Dolphins are going to have a strong finish, and I'm slightly convinced that Dolphins do have a strong finish to the season. I bet the Dolphins to make the playoffs like 895, I think, plus 895 at Circa. So I like that, but I don't necessarily think Waddle's going to do enough to jump Mac Jones or Jamar Chase. So no, I wouldn't bet it for more than $100 or whatever you're comfortable betting, taking a long shot. Doesn't mean it's a bad bet, just not going to do it for me. Then Andy asks, would love to hear your thoughts on teasing Army with NFL Wong pairs. So my thoughts on that are that I have no problem teasing Army down from 7.5 to 1.5, or if you have a flat 7 down to 1, even better. I have no problem with that. Pairing it with, if you want to take the Rams plus 8.5, I'm a little interested in that. I saw there were a couple other Wong lines in the NFL. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. The Rams was the one I was most interested in. But my thoughts on teasing Army with Wong, NFL Wong legs, is essentially go for it, but don't pay minus 120 for it. If you're paying over minus 110, it's probably a bad bet. If you get it at even money, that's going to be a good bet. But a lot of books won't book teasers at low prices like that anymore, which is understandable. It's unfortunate, but understandable. The thing to look for is sometimes you'll get college teaser lines where you just do college games. They'll be even money. If you want to use Army in that with something in the bowl season, not crazy. If you wanted to tease Army, tease Army down to 1.5 and tease it with the under. If your book will let you, same game Army side in total. Not necessarily opposed to that. I do sort of lean Navy plus 7.5 though. I think in the Service Academy game on a 34 total, 7.5's a decent bet. And Navy could win too. I mean, it's these rivalry games are just they're not usually blowouts. But yeah, I'm not opposed to teasing the side here with NFL side. Just be aware of what you're paying to tease college sides. If it's anything more than minus 110, I would not recommend teasers in general. But yeah, I like the Rams on the Wong legs this weekend, so I got that going. I didn't tease it much to Army. I did it with a couple different NFL games. So yeah, that's basically a rundown of the football stuff going on today and this week. The Thursday night game is slightly boring in terms of betting, but it's got some nice playoff implications, so I will probably be watching because there's really not much else going on sports-wise tonight. And then I'm going to open a baseball card real quick because we got a lot of baseball cards to go through, so excuse me while I grab one behind me real quick. Okay, so today I think I'm just going to do one unless it was really bad. So I bought this. This was on June 3rd. What was I buying on June 3rd? Cool. So, excuse me real quick. So you see this card? His face is blocked. I'm gonna try to peel this top sticker off real quick. If you've seen the last couple episodes, I had some Dodgers cards. I had Josiah Gray and Kybert Ruiz, who are now no longer on the Dodgers. They're both Nationals players now. They got traded for Scherzer. One of the reasons that the Dodgers were so confident in trading Kybert Ruiz, who's one of the best pitching prospects in baseball, is because they have this guy, Diego Kartaya. Can you see this? Trying to get it as nice for you as I can. I'm still working on the showing stuff to the camera, but yeah, this is Diego Kartaya. He's a 19-year-old Venezuelan catcher in the Dodgers system. He made it to High A Rancho last year. If you're not familiar with him, I would check him out. Twitter has some very cool highlights of him hitting some very long home runs. I think he's a future catcher, designated hitter type for the Dodgers. Probably 2-3 years away, but he's one of the top prospects in their system. So I wasn't surprised when they traded Kybert Ruiz because it's just a log jam. So Kartaya gets added to my collection. This will probably be a guy that goes on the shelf behind me on that stack of baseball cards and sits there for a year or two till he gets close to the majors. Then I'll probably try to sell him. But yeah, Diego Kartaya, that's definitely a name to know for baseball season when we get baseball back. And that's the baseball card for today. We'll keep opening all these baseball cards till I have none left, and then I will buy some more. So yeah, be back tomorrow with more football, more baseball cards, more everything. So yeah, that's today's show.